in the space wide and bare, a burning love from white spiritual sound, annulled the sorrow of the ignorant dead. Suffering was lost in her immortal mind. Was felt in the space wide and bare, a burning love from white spiritual sound, annulled the sorrow of the ignorant dead. Suffering was lost in her immortal mind.
Good morning. Happy Christmas. The mother would give quite a bit of importance to Christmas. They would have a kind of celebration in the ashram, have a big Christmas tree, and she would give out presents to the ashramites. And she looked at it as, she would say, there was a more ancient tradition, even before Christ, that was there at this time, related to the return of the light. So it's the winter solstice, the light, the sun changes, but this was kind of celebrated even before for a long time. So we're reading in Book 3, Canto 2, the Adoration of the Divine Mother. It's a very special, beautiful canto. We've come to page 313, about halfway down, line 119, I believe. So we're still following the journey of King Aswapati through the inner worlds. He's scaled the whole hierarchy of the subtle planes of consciousness, from subtle matter up to the heights, the edge of the unknowable. And there, you can just read a brief description of that. I'll just read at the end of the last canto on page 309. He describes this experience that he has of this unknowable, a being formless, featureless, and mute, that knew itself by its own timeless self, aware forever in its motionless depths, uncreating, uncreated, and unborn, the one by whom all live, who lives by none, and immeasurable, luminous secrecy, guarded by the veils of the unmanifest, above the changing cosmic interlude, abode supreme, immutably the same, a silent cause, occult, impenetrable, infinite, eternal, unthinkable, alone. And then, in this canto, he has a shift in his experience. So just what we were reading last time on page 312, at the break there, even while he stood on being's naked edge, and all the passion and seeking of his soul faced their extinction in some featureless vast, the presence he yearned for suddenly drew close. Across the silence of the ultimate calm, out of a marvelous transcendence core, a body of wonder and translucency, as if a sweet mystic summary of herself, escaping into the original bliss, had come enlarged out of eternity. Someone came, infinite and absolute, a being of wisdom, power, and delight, even as a mother draws her child to her arms, took to her breast nature and world and soul. So we're continuing now Sri Aurobindo's description of the Divine Mother who Aswapati is encountering. So we'll continue from line 119. And Suresh, would you like to read?
The enigma case that rules our nature's night. The covering nescience was unmarked and slain. Lid's mind of error was stripped off from things, and the dual moods of its perverting will, illumined by her all-seeing identity, knowledge and ignorance, could strive no more. No longer could the titan opposites, antagonist poles of the world's artifice, impose the illusion of the twofold screen, throwing the figures between as and air. The wisdom was near disgusted by its own worth, of which the darkened universe is the robe. No more existence seemed an animal's fall. Extinction was no more the sole release. The Eden world was found, the long sought glue. Revolved was the meaning of our spirit's bright, condemned to an imperfect body and mind in the unconscious of material things and the indignity of mortal life. The heart was felt in the space, wide and bare, a burning love from wide spiritual founts, annulled the sorrow of the ignorant depths. Suffering was lost in her immortal smile.
Thank you. So we'll pause there. You can just read it over again yourself, silently. So Sri Aurobindo explains here how Asopati has discovered the reconciliation between the unknowable that he has discovered and the darkness and ignorance of our earthly nature that we experience here. In the beginning of this canto, Sri Aurobindo explains how when one encounters that transcendent divine, that all else appears unreal compared to that tremendously powerful experience of the infinite and eternal. So it is kind of an enigma. Well, he explains in the beginning of the canto, he hears kind of a voice saying, but what about the world? You can't just enter into this vast, infinite consciousness. What happened to your mission in the world? What happens to all the beings remaining in this suffering life? You've only accomplished half of your mission. You found the release, but what about the fulfillment of life on earth? Which he had in the beginning actually set out to solve, to understand. The voice had told him, "Thou hast leaped into a glad divine abyss, but where hast thou thrown self's mission and self's power?" So here, in encountering the Divine Mother, he encounters a tremendous power and also delight and joy that reconciles the two. Whereas before, the earth seemed like a result of a mind of error that was stripped off from things and the dull moods of its perverting will, that creates this sense of misery here in this world. Illumined by her all-seeing identity, knowledge and ignorance could strive no more. No longer could the Titan opposites, antagonist poles of the world's artifice, impose the illusion of their twofold screen, throwing their figures between us and her. So this twofold screen, this darkness of the world, and that unknowable transcendence which seems to exclude the world and renders it seemingly unreal and illusion. So here he finds the reconciliation. The wisdom was near, disguised by its own works, of which the darkened universe is the robe. So that's the covering. The world, this darkened, ignorant universe, is the covering over that wisdom, over that delight of the Divine Mother. And now no more existence seemed an aimless fall, and extinction was no more the sole release. It had appeared as if the extinction of his own being was the only way to escape this misery and suffering of life. But now there's an affirming positive reconciliation. The hidden word was found. The long-sought clue. Revealed was the meaning of the Spirit's birth, condemned to an imperfect body and mind in the inconscience of material things and the indignity of mortal life. I'm often touched by that line. I think of it sometimes when encountering the indignities of life sometimes.
But there's no mention, in his perspective, Savitri doesn't come into the picture yet, right?
Right.
He's still on the journey.
Right.
He's the mother, and then Savitri comes as the solution. Is that kind of a...
Right. We'll see towards the end of this book of the Divine Mother that he implores this being to descend on earth and end this suffering, transform this suffering of life. And finally she agrees. So then in the next book, she is born as his daughter.
Then we have, there's so much talk about immortality, but then this part is that immortal smile. So if you have a smile, it's immortal. That sort of covers everything.
Yeah, she brings this personality instead of this kind of vast unknowability. She brings personality, she brings love, she brings compassion, she brings delight. All of those things. That's the positive, beautiful aspect of the divine that was missing from this kind of passive aspect or something that was aloof from the universe. Here she embraces the universe. So he explains that she's revealed the meaning of our spirit's birth, but yet I think that explanation still has yet to come in its fullness. But the sense that she is here, that this beauty and delight is embracing the world, gives it some hope. So we'll continue. Would you like to read? No, up, yeah.
A life from beyond grew conqueror here of death. To err no more was natural to mind. Wrong could not come where all was light and love. The formless and the formed were joined in her. Immensity was exceeded by a look. A face revealed the crowded infinite, incarnating inexpressibly in her limbs. The boundless joy was blind, world forces seek. Her body of beauty mooned the seas of bliss. At the head she stands of birth and toil and fate. In their slow round the cycles turn to her call. Alone, Her hands can change, change time's dragon base. Here, hers is the mystery the night conceals. The spirit's alchemist, energy is hers. She is the golden bridge, the wonderful fire, the luminous heart of the unknown is she, a power of silence in the depths of God. She is the force, the inevitable word, the magnet of our difficult ascent, the sun from which we kindle all our suns, the light that leans from the unrealized vasts, the joy that beckons from the impossible, the might of all that never yet came down.
Thank you. Let's pause there. Here, Sri Aurobindo gives us more of that explanation of how she presents meaning to our existence. So even in that first line, a life from beyond grew conqueror here of death. So she brings, let's say, a possibility of a divine life, a life from beyond that can conquer death. And that can remove that error, which is now natural to mind. A mind where all is light and love. And here she reconciles the formless and the formed. The formless, infinite and absolute spirit, and the forms of the universe were joined in her. Immensity, this infinity of existence, was exceeded by a look. A face revealed the crowded infinite. In her being, in her form, she incarnates that infinity. And somehow she becomes a kind of window into that infinity. Incarnating inexpressibly in her limbs the boundless joy the blind world forces seek. So she incarnates the boundless joy in her limbs, the boundless joy that the world forces seek. her body of beauty, moon the seas of bliss. And then at the head she stands of birth and toil and fate. In their slow rounds, the cycles turn to her call. Alone her hands can change time's dragon base. She alone has the power to transform that cycle of birth and rebirth. Yeah, so the question is, what's the joy, the boundless joy that the blind world forces seek? Well, the world forces are the forces of life here in the world. They're blind because they're ignorant. They don't know really what they're seeking. We seek for joy in small pleasures, small satisfactions, small ambitions. But actually we're seeking for that infinite delight that the mother represents and carries.
Why does it say that practice relieves the crowded infinite? Why is the infinite crowded?
Because it's so full of things and beings. The universe is packed with all kinds of creations, all individualities, billions and billions of them. Yeah, it's a powerful line. Alone her hands can change time's dragon base. So what is the basis of time? What's the basis of our material universe? There's this dragon base. Well, that base is inconscient. It's dark, unknowing, insensible. And then perhaps within it, it holds something, all kinds of things it holds the manifestation which evolves out of it, but also what comes out are not only beautiful things, but also suffering and misery, and also beings that represent and support that suffering. In the darknesses of the occult, in our subconscious nature, there is evil lurking. There is darknesses. So to some extent, I think this dragon represents these forces that are buried deep in the subconscious. So she alone can change things at the very basis of the existence. We can have small helps, amelioration of superficial difficulties and problems. That's okay, that we can do. But she alone can change it from the very basis of the existence, which alone can really solve the suffering of the world. Well, perhaps, yeah, she has to go to the very basis of time and space. So she holds the mystery the night conceals. Actually, that divine force that she represents is concealed by the darkness of the inconscience from which the evolution proceeds. If that force wasn't there, evolution could never proceed. The higher consciousness could not come out of it. But eventually it also holds that divine consciousness within it, within that unconsciousness of matter. And then the Spirit's alchemist energy is hers. She can transform things from what they are into their divine possibilities. Ignorance into knowledge, suffering into delight. She is the golden bridge, the wonderful fire. She is the bridge between that suffering and the delight of the divine. And she is that fire that aspires within the creation towards her power and delight. She is the luminous heart of the unknown. The unknown that he had been seeking also has this wonderful heart of light that leans in compassion to the world. And now he's found that. And she is the magnet of our difficult descent. She is drawing up this evolution through its long ages towards herself, towards the consciousness, towards the force, towards the delight of the divine being. She is the light that leans from the unrealized vast. It's from her that light descends, giving us hope, giving us some happiness, the joy that beckons from the impossible. And she is the might of all that never yet came down. We've had some of her power come down, has been released in our world, in our consciousness, but she holds all power within her. There's much more yet to come. So let's continue, Sudanya.
All nature's drumly calls to her alone, to heal with her feet the aching throb of life, and break the seals on the dim soul of man, and kindle her fire in the close heart of things. All here shall be one day her sweetness home. All contraries prepare her harmony. Towards her our knowledge climbs, our passions groups. In her miraculous raptures we shall dwell. Her claps shall turn to ecstasy or pain. Our self shall be one self with all through her. In her conform, because transform in her, all life shall find in its fulfilled response. Above the boundless host beatitude, below the wonder of the embrace divine. This known as in a thunder flash of God, the rapture of things eternal filled his limbs. Amazement fell upon his ravished sense. His spirit was caught in her intolerant flame. Once seen, his heart acknowledged only her. Only a hunger of infinite bliss was left. All aims in her were lost, then found in her. His base was gathered to one winding spire.
Thank you. He says, all nature dumbly calls to her alone. So all of nature silently aspires towards that greater existence of what she represents. Physical matter cannot speak. The animals, the plants cannot speak, but yet they also have this yearning within them for release of what is still pent up within them, the delight that's there within existence, the consciousness the power, which they cannot yet realize, but they feel somewhere within themselves. And then to heal with her feet the aching throb of life and break the seals on the dim soul of man and kindle her fire in the closed heart of things. So we also yearn for that release from suffering, for healing. And then Sri Aurobindo continues with this very profound and prophetic few sentences. All here shall be one day her sweetness home. All contraries prepare her harmony. Towards her our knowledge climbs, our passion gropes. In her miraculous rapture we shall dwell. Her clasp shall turn to ecstasy our pain. We saw that she had that alchemist energy. She can transform our pain to ecstasy. But he's suggesting that eventually, one day, our earth will be her home, that she can live here consciously and the world will be able to express that delight and consciousness that she is. And all our contraries, all our conflicts and oppositions are preparing her harmony. In her miraculous rapture we shall dwell. Our self shall be one self with all through her. Knowing her, identified with her, we will be united with all beings, with all nature.
This know by heart, and also, and then I became more conscious and say, oneself, and oneself is also her. Then I looked at about the meaning of self, and it is the essence, and the way and the soul, how you can look at this self. It is not the human being, as such somehow.
Yeah, now we think of ourselves as this limited being in a body and mind. But we will lose that limited sense of ourself and find our true self, which is the divine being. Ultimately, that is our true self. And when we find our true self in the divine, then we find our unity with others, because that is the true self of all. Not only our true self of us, but of all beings. So when we find that true self in her, in the divine being, the absolute, then we'll find our unity with others in the world. Until then, we can strive to reconcile our differences and our conflicts, but it's a futile process, actually. Excuse me? Yes. It's already done.
already done, but we're playing it out.
Yeah.
For some enjoyment and some excitement.
Yeah. In the view from the eternal being, it's finished, it's complete. But we're in this process of time, and it's unrolling. But we can also, yeah, so we can escape this limitation of time. We can enter into that consciousness.
And not get lost.
Yeah. That's how we find that reconciliation, through her, by finding that self, the true self within us. Then we escape that divisiveness of the world. In her confirmed because transformed in her. But also not only inwardly aware of the oneness, our life shall find in its fulfilled response above the boundless hush beatitudes and below the wonder of the embrace divine. So here's that reconciliation again of the unknowable above and below our earth, which will become embraced by the divine, transformed in the divine.
He gets it in a flash. You don't have to wait.
He's known it, and then the rapture of things eternal filled his limbs. So he experienced it even in his body. Amazement fell on his ravished sense. His spirit was caught in her intolerant flame. And then, once he sees, knows this Divine Mother, all else, all other aims were lost. In that one aim, her. And his base was gathered to one pointing spire. He was one-pointedly oriented, directed towards her. So he is the forerunner of Earth's evolution. And now he's found the solution, the Divine Mother. So we'll continue.
This was a seed cast into endless time. A word is spoken or a light is shown. A moment cease, the ages toil to express. So flashing out of the timeless leap the worlds. An eternal instant is the cause of the years. All he had done was to prepare a field. His small beginnings asked for a mighty end. For all that he had been must now new shape. In him her joy to embody, to enshrine, her beauty and greatness in his house of life. But now his being was too wide for self. His heart's demand had grown immeasurable. His single freedom could not satisfy. Her light, her bliss, he asked for earth and men.
Excuse me, can we pause there? I'd like to pause because it's so significant. So Asopati has this encounter with the Divine Mother. And her rapture fills him with delight. He recognizes that she is the power that can transform life, transform the world, that she reconciles the life of earth with that unknowable, transcendent, divine being. So he's turned only to her. So this is the beginning. This is a seed cast into endless time, because he's found the solution, but it has yet to manifest itself in the world. I'll just continue a little bit more. So a light has been shown. He sees the possibilities, but the ages have yet to express this divine life here on earth. Hopefully it won't be too many ages, but some time is needed. So flashing out of the timeless leap the worlds. Similarly, at some point of creation of our material universe, perhaps a big bang or whatever it was, and then this universe was created in that instant. And then also it had to evolve, and has been evolving up until human consciousness, the human mind. But now a similar kind of moment has arrived, where the Divine Mother is able to make a new creation, a divine creation, no longer in the ignorance of matter and of the limited mind, but a divine life. So a new world is born the mother said, 1956. It's not the continuation of the previous world. Something new has been created. So it says, all he had done was to prepare a field. His small beginnings asked for a mighty end. He's created the ground for this new creation. But yet it has to reveal itself, has to manifest. Now you had a question.
Mother, she's a hero, she's a role model. She's a very good master to identify everything in us. The people, they don't have a habit about divineness. They don't know. The divineness. Everyone search outside. They worship the creation. They don't know the reality. The divine is inside.
Yeah, so she represents that inner divinity which is there also within all of us. So yes, you're right, we do tend to look outside of ourselves, but that divinity is there within us also.
So the divinity, divineness, it's not, certain years, it's for entire life, it's a very deep research she did. She took a practice a lot for search herself, divine how much level it can powerfully use of divine power, such a wonderful manner to create new things. It's a true man.
Okay, so yes, you seem to be kind of talking about the mother of the ashram. She is also that kind of role model for us, and she represents all of these things. But that's getting a little bit beyond, in a sense, the poem. What Aswapati is experiencing now is this transcendent divine mother, this power that can transform the world. And so he's encountered that. Later, she will be born as his daughter, Savitri. Later in the poem, she will incarnate in that form. And that form of Savitri, that incarnation, has many parallels with the Divine Mother of the ashram. But that is still a little bit further along in the poem. There was another question someone had? No. Okay. So, at the end of this passage, it says, "But now his being was too wide for self. His heart's demand had grown immeasurable. His single freedom could not satisfy. Her light, her bliss, he asked for earth and men." So he had already climbed in his consciousness to the heights, but also expanded his being to become one with the universe. He was not only seeking, or perhaps he was seeking in the beginning for some kind of fulfillment for himself, but now he's identified with the world with all of humanity, with the universe as a whole. So he's encountered this Divine Mother, but now he wants that light and bliss to come into the entire world, into the entire universe, and to fill it with her delight. He's no longer just asking for himself or realizing just for himself.
Also, when I to recognize more and more what a great step the mother and she are moving forward for all these consciousness to reason and to widening. It helped me also to look at the evolution of consciousness as it came to our task. How in the first time the consciousness falls in fish form was there. And then it was in the past from all these steps in evolution that we there. And always had been big leaps to come forward with something new thing. Then I can more understand or why what a big step it is. It's not just with the mind or something.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, this evolutionary process out of matter to even our human stage has been a long, long process. And there were many different steps along that process where the first beginnings of life had to emerge and the first simple forms of animals came. So there were many steps along the way. And the divine descended into the world in order to further those steps, to make those leaps forward as avatars. Yes. So now again, Sri Aurobindo and the Mother have come, the dual avatars, to make this next more dramatic leap from the evolution in the ignorance to the evolution in the divine knowledge. So even then it can continue, the evolution. Still it can evolve and grow into something greater and greater and greater. But then it's no longer a kind of a struggling, conflictual evolution. It's one where the beings are already aware of the divine source and are expressive of that. So let's continue reading. Tineke.
But vain are human power and human love, to break earth's seal of ignorance and death. His nature's mind seemed now an infant's grasp. Heaven is too high for outstretched hands to seize. This light comes not by struggle or by thought. In the mind's silence the transcendent acts, and the hushed heart hears the unuttered word. A vast surrender was his only strength. A power that lives upon the heights must act, bring into life's closed room the immortal's air, and fill the finite with the infinite. All that denies must be torn out and slain and crushed, the many longings for whose sake we lose the one for whom our lives were made. Now other claims had hushed in him their cry. Only he longed to draw her presence and power into his heart and mind and breathing frame. Only he yearned to call forever down her healing touch of love and truth and joy into the darkness of the suffering world. His soul was freed and given to her alone.
Thank you. So here, Sri Aurobindo reminds us, I think, of a central truth about spirituality, that it comes by surrender to the infinite, to the divine, that we can't realize it through our own limited efforts. Our being is limited in its nature. If we try to take it, Sri Aurobindo sometimes would refer to taking the divine by storm. We can strive with our will to realize the divine. But also that can lead to disaster because the ego becomes magnified. And instead of opening up into the infinite, we opened up to an expanded sense of ourselves. An expanded ego, inflated ego. So here he says, this light comes not by struggle or by thought. And we have to remember that this is King Aswapati, the lord of the horse, the lord of tapasya. So he has been striving with this powerful will. Through all these planes of consciousness, he has ascended. And then he encounters the Divine Mother and he realizes that all his efforts are null, in vain, and he just falls at her feet and surrenders himself completely to her. He realizes that she alone can change time's dragon base. He cannot do that. She has the force.
The important thing is this, as you said, that's the central truth of spirituality. It's not by struggle or by thought. And that's why I think the mother and Aurobindo also introduced what they call the sunlit path. Because you have to stop the struggle and you have to stop the thought. Otherwise, you don't get into it.
But here he also describes the absolute nature of that surrender that's needed. So he says, a vast surrender was his only strength. Okay, so that was the only power that he had, was to give himself up into the hands of the Divine Mother.
What does that mean practically? How do you live your life if you're surrendered to the divine? What does that mean? It has to mean that everything that happens to you is coming from the divine.
Yeah.
And if you see it otherwise, you're in trouble. And then you go up.
So, right. So B is telling us about the sunlit path. But she wrote a book about this, explaining this. And we have to see that all that's taking place is due to the divine. The divine alone is here doing all. We have to give up this sense that we are the doers. We are the sadhaks doing the sadhana. She is the sadhak and the sadhana. Sri Aurobindo says that in the book The Mother.
Yeah, and our job is to surrender.
Our job is to surrender. To call her in to our being, to allow only her. Because many other forces are all too happy to take over our being and to direct us here or there. Many forces are there, ignorant forces, that will lead us this way or that way to fulfill their own aims. And these can be forces outside in the world. Our parents can tell us, we should do this and we should do that. And then we listen to that throughout our life. Or society, the ideals of our country. And so all these influences are there, but also in the invisible realms, from the worlds of life and the worlds of mind and the worlds of the underworld. All are trying to get into our mind, put their seeds of thought there, or speak to us almost in their subtle voices.
Isn't it up to us to realize and be aware of what those forces are, because they are in us. We don't have to be society or our parents or whoever or whatever. But they come in us, and it's up to us to be aware.
So we have to be aware of all of that. So I think, but it's a key point that we have to make that distinction also between the divine and the undivine forces that are there. That's a crucial distinction. Because we can't just let everything come and say, oh, it's all the divine, and then it's okay. Because sometimes it's not okay, right? So, because they will also lead you astray. And so there is kind of a special consciousness and force that's there in the presence of the divine that we have to attune ourselves to and accept that and to open ourselves to that higher light and that higher nature.
See, the mother says we'll never, ever understand the grace. Because the grace is beyond all of this. But we have that also. That's like the extra warranty or insurance.
Yes.
Grace.
And the thing is too that, being in the ignorance, we're starting out from where we are. And so we're not in that absolute knowledge, that absolute ability to distinguish all these different forces. So we're also led by the Divine Mother through the ignorance towards herself. So she leads us through these sometimes winding paths. But still, as we get closer and closer, then we have to distinguish more and more, to move more in the light and less in the darkness, towards her summits, towards herself.
We are in the darkness and we surrender. That will not fulfill the aim what we want. We should rise ourselves certain height.
Yeah, but we have to do that. It takes time. That's kind of the thing, because it's a process. I mean, maybe some can do it. Some can leap out of that ignorance and totally give themselves up into that divine force. But here, so he makes it pretty stark in these lines. All that denies must be torn out and slain, and crushed the many longings for whose sake we lose the one for whom our lives were made. So these are, in a sense, all those other voices that are clamoring for entry into our nature to stimulate our desires, our longings.
But they stopped.
Yeah, for him they stopped. For him they stopped. Now other claims had hushed in him their cry. Only he longed to draw her presence and power into his heart and mind and breathing frame, into his mind, life, and body, to call that divine force down into himself, but also into the world, through himself. Remember, his physical body, his matter is one with all matter. It's the same as all matter. So he brings that divine force into his body. He brings it into the world. Because now also his body is united with the world. He's realized the cosmic consciousness. Only he yearned to call the Divine Mother forever down, her healing touch of love and truth and joy into the darkness of the suffering world. His soul was freed and given to her alone. So we stop there for today. There's more to come. A mightier task remained than all he had done.
in her, confirmed because transformed in her. Our life shall find in its fulfilled response above the boundless hush beatitude, below the wonder of the embrace divine. This known as inner thunderflash of God, the rapture of things eternal filled his limbs. Amazement fell upon his ravished sense. His spirit was caught in her intolerant flame. Once seen, his heart acknowledged only her.
Thanks to Sri Aurobindo.